CNN senior correspondent Nia Malika Henderson is joining us from Washington, D.C. to discuss political climate in the United States, as well as bring us the latest on elections 2020. Nia, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be with you.
Well, we'll start with the newest. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden picked Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, and they have held their first campaign event together. Biden said Harris is, quote, the right person, end quote, for the role of the vice president. Nia, as this expected, was it expected that he would choose Harris as his running mate, and how does the public in the United States perceive this choice?
Well, the public, in the United States is divided because Republicans feel a certain way about this pick. They think Kamala Harris is wrong on a lot of issues, but Democrats are really energized about it. They're energized about the fact that this is an historic pick. She's the first African-American woman to be nominated, or she'll soon be nominated for the vice presidential role. She's the first Asian American as well. So there's a great deal of excitement about the history of this moment among Democrats. You saw her there looking very presidential when she was rolled out as the vice presidential pick with Joe Biden on yesterday in Joe Biden's home state of Delaware. And he lauded her. He lauded her for her fighting spirit, her passion, said that she would want to go to work immediately for the middle class in this country and those who can't even get into the middle class because of the way the economy is shaped right now. And you saw Kamala Harris in a role that she is going to take on, and that is taking the case to this president, saying that he's been a failure in terms of jobs, job growth, and saying that he has been a failure in terms of bringing this country together, as well as a failure in terms of how he's handled COVID.
We'll get to that in one moment. Biden says in his speech that Harris' story is American story. It's America's story. He described Harris as a child of immigrants who knows personally how immigrant families enrich the country, as well as the challenges of what it means to grow up Black and Indian American in the United States of America. Now, in the wake of a very controversial rhetoric from Trump's administration on immigration policies, would Biden-Harris tackle these issues differently?
They certainly would. I mean, they will likely, if they go into the Oval Office, they would be much more welcoming to legal immigrants and probably look for a pathway to citizenship for the folks who are here without proper documentation. So they have not only different policy approach than this president does, President Trump, but they also have different rhetoric. And you heard Biden there, you referred to the way he talked about Kamala Harris, she herself, the child of immigrants. He said, listen, Kamala Harris's background is different from different from Joe Biden's. He's an Irish Catholic, obviously, and grew up very differently. But they both represent America. They both represent America's story. So their policy approach, and certainly their rhetorical approach to the immigration issue in this country, would be vastly different than the current president. And that's something I think that a lot of Democrats and a lot of independents as well are looking forward to. They don't like the mean-spiritedness that they feel like comes from this president in terms of immigration, which many see as the lifeblood of this country and a way to keep the economy growing, or even restart the economy that has in many ways been stalled because of the epidemic.
And Harris is already facing backlash from the acting president, President Trump, as well as his entire staff and family. Now, Eric Trump, the son of the President Donald Trump, liked a tweet on Wednesday that used a sexist slur to refer to California Senator Kamala Harris and former Vice President Joe Biden's decision to pick her as his running mate. Now, the now deleted tweet Eric Trump liked was from an account belonging to a user named Lori Hendry, and it read, "Raise your hand if you think Harris was a horrendous pick," may have misspelled. Now, will this be a dirty campaign on Trump's side?
Absolutely. It's going to be an incredibly dirty campaign. You hear the way already that Donald Trump is referring to Kamala Harris, calling her mean, calling her nasty. In an interview today, he said that she was a mad woman, that she was very angry. So it is going to be very, very nasty. They've been calling her the most progressive liberal senator as well. So they obviously have disagreements on policy, but they are going after her in a very personal way, as well as a way that some see as both racist and sexist. You know, this idea of an angry black woman is a popular idea in America and often used against black women in particular. So you see Donald Trump picking that up and going after Kamala Harris. We'll see if it works. A lot of people obviously don't like this kind of language coming from the highest office in the United States. It's such, nasty language to refer to a very accomplished woman, and a woman who, by all accounts, in terms of policy and her demeanor and in terms of her just manner and bearing, is fairly moderate, right? She isn't a radical, even though that is the way that this president wants to portray her, to essentially scare voters, to say, you don't want this radical, angry black woman to have so much power to possibly transform your lives. He's particularly, obviously, talking to his base, those hardcore Trump voters, and hoping that they will stay with him and others will rally around him to keep him in the White House.
Oh, we know Trump's rhetorics when it comes to women, not only women of color, but women in general. Ever since 2016, since he came into the Oval Office, but it seems as if he's not losing voters over that. Now, all right, now, Senator Kamala Harris, she zeroed in on President Trump when discussing why the U.S. leads the world with the most COVID-19 infections. The U.S. led the world with more than 5 million coronavirus cases because of, she said, Trump's failure to take it seriously from the start. She said during her first appearance as Joe Biden's choice for vice president. Now, the pair said they will tackle the pandemic differently as well. Is there a plan they are talking about, and what would that actually include?
Well, one major thing that they want to do that this president does not want to do is to have more of a national mask mandate. This president has said you can wear a mask if you want, you don't have to. Maybe if you want to wear it when you're inside and near people, you should. But there hasn't been a very consistent message out of this White House in terms of wearing a mask. So that would be something that would be different coming from a Biden-Harris administration. They also want to expand testing and contact tracing. Again, Donald Trump likes to say that testing is a problem because Americans have been tested so often for COVID, then you get so many cases, as if, the testing actually leads to the cases, which obviously we know is not true. And so that is something that they want to do. Democrats also would like to make sure schools have the funding they need to actually reopen in a much more safe way rather than a kind of haphazard way that's happening now. So their approach to it would be much more national, whereas Trump's approach to it is very piecemeal. It's like, let each state basically do what they want to do. And so I think that would be a very different kind of tone and approach to COVID, and one that we haven't seen from this president. President Trump, for instance, just in an interview today said that the virus would go away. So that kind of rhetoric would go away as well if there was a Biden-Harris administration. They are just look at this much more realistically and see it as a much more severe problem that's going to take the federal, the sort of muscle of the federal government in a way that Donald Trump doesn't really want to do at this point.
And not to use racist slurs when it comes to pandemic, not to call it China virus, not to call it Wuhan virus. I mean, we have to be honest here. The rhetoric that President Trump was portraying out of White House is not something that Biden-Harris would do. That's at least the general opinion of the public, I think.
I think that's right. And they, in condemning the way Donald Trump talks about other people, the way he uses these sort of racist and sexist language, they condemn it. And Biden himself has talked about this race. He got into this race to restore the soul of the nation and to unify the country. And people don't think of Donald Trump as a unifying figure. People think of him as a very divisive figure who uses all sorts of language to degrade women, to talk badly about minorities as well. So it would be a completely different tone from the Biden and Harris administration on any number of issues in this sort of just basic issue of just talking in a way that is respectful towards other people.
So how would Biden Harris, if they won the elections, could change the social turmoil in the United States that we see, especially now after the murder, after the death of George Floyd? Would they handle it differently, or would it be a different story today? What would they do, and how would they tackle social turmoil that we see now in the United States?
Well, again, I mean, we keep talking about language. Certainly their language would be different from this president. This president doesn't like the Black Lives Matter movement. He's never uttered those words in a sort of positive, affirmative way, and sees the Black Lives Matter movement and those activists really as sort of troublemakers. He's likened them to terrorists, in fact. So that would be a turn of the page if you had a Biden-Harris administration. They also think that police should be funded more robustly, but there should be much more of a focus on community policing. And policemen often have very vast equipment, sort of the equipment that almost looks like equipment that you would take to war, and that's something they want to take a look at. So I think, sort of in tone and approach and policy with this core issue of policing, they would be much more going in the direction of trying to reform police departments rather than just sort of encouraging police departments, and also in listening to some of the complaints of Black Lives Matter movement folks who are complaining about obviously racial inequality, gender inequality, and inequality all across the board in terms of the economy. So I think that would be a much different approach to these issues, much more in line with traditionally what we've seen from Democratic presidents, and certainly much more like Barack Obama handled these issues when he was in the White House a few years ago.
Harris claimed Trump inherited the longest economic expansion in the history of Barack Obama and Joe Biden and ran it straight into the ground. Trump doesn't agree with that. She said because of Trump's failures to leadership, the economy has taken one of the biggest hits out of all major industrialized nations, with an unemployment rate that was tripled as of today, the senator said. Now, Trump doesn't agree with that. He thinks that economy has seen the best expansion, the biggest expansion during his mandate in the White House.
Right. A lot of disagreement here. And of course, Donald Trump was hoping that that economic expansion and that low unemployment rate would be his ticket to another term. The virus obviously had a different effect that he didn't necessarily anticipate on the economy. Most economists agree that Obama did a great deal for this economy. The unemployment rate dipped to way under 10% during his time. As he took office, it was about 10%. As he was leaving office, it was close to 5%. And you saw Donald Trump be able to really to capitalize on that. The stock market, of course, grew record heights to the stock market. Also the case in Barack Obama's term as well. He is mightily trying, Donald Trump is, to kind of breathe new life into this economy that has indeed stalled because of this pandemic. Something like 30 million Americans are out of work. You see, and you referred to the unemployment rate, and now people all across the United States struggling with basic needs, paying their bills. Can they put food on the table? Can they pay their health insurance? And these are issues that Donald Trump hasn't really really tackled in the way that most Americans think he thinks that he should. And that's why you see now, if you look at national polls, in a matchup between Biden and Harris and a matchup between Donald Trump and Vice President Pence, Biden is leading by double digits, 10 points or so. And in these critical states, it's a similar theme as well. And that's why you see this president a bit nervous, right? Nervous about what does Kamala Harris mean to this ticket, and
we
nervous about how he gets those
we
voters.
can see it on his Twitter profile.
Yes, exactly.
The
exactly. There is nervousness. And he really at this point, yeah, he really is trying to reach out to those core supporters and get them re-energized behind his cause. And he's also trying to discourage people from voting in a way that would make it very easy to vote, mail-in voting. So, yeah, I mean, we've got less than 90 days to go before this election, and he will be out there aggressively trying to recapture that group of voters that sent him to the White House in 2016. But listen, he's got not much time to do it in this huge, huge problem of this global pandemic, which is choking the economy in America and frightening people about their health and really stalling any sort of economic growth and plans for kids to go back to school. So a lot of fear, anxiety, and stress in America over this pandemic and what it's meant for the economy.
Challenges. Nia, one last question for you. Will foreign policies change if Biden-Harris take over the Oval Office? Paris Climate Accords, Iran nuclear deal, North Korea deal, better ties with China?
Yeah, this is a great question. Typically, American elections aren't really decided on foreign policy unless there's a hot war going on, and that's not the case here. But definitely, if you have a Biden and Harris administration, a different approach to Iran, certainly a different approach to Russia as well, and certainly a different approach. You talked about North Korea as well. This ticket thinks that this president has been too close to autocratic leaders across the country or across the globe and offering too much praise. You wouldn't see that from a Biden-Harris administration. Joe Biden himself, one of the reasons that Barack Obama chose him in 2008 was because he was well versed in foreign policy. And of course, he spent 8 years as vice president, so he knows foreign leaders all across the world. And I think that their goal would be to repair some of these fractured relationships, particularly if you think about the fractured relationships in Europe, right? And what has it meant that in many ways this president has turned his back on alliances all across the world. And so I think it would be a repair effort going forward if you had a Biden-Harris administration to sort of undo a lot of the damage that people think the President Trump has done to America's reputation in some of those alliances around the world.
Exactly, the reputation. Nia, thank you very much for taking time to speak with us. It was such a pleasure, and thank you for filling us up on the newest information when it comes to U.S. policies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You take care.
Thank you. CNN senior correspondent Nia Malika Henderson was joining us from Washington, D.C. We discussed political climate in the United States, as well as bringing us the latest on elections 2020. Thank you for watching.